I want some chocolate. Can I get it open?
Gosh, that's a good idea.
Just want to see what they have to do, how they're going to try to maneuver out of the situation.
Hello there. How are you? Oh, fine. I thought you were going to stab me in the neck.
Oh, thanks.
How you been?
All right.
Good.
Molly got married?
She did. Yes.
This will be good. Okay, got it. All right, we're going to call a meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance. Secretary, call the roll.
Here. Chulada.
Here.
Dunlap.
Here.
Casper. Here. Lloyd. Here. Barry.
Here.
Nenza.
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to ask those that are not wearing a mask to put one on, please. We are still following current school guidance and school policies.
You're breaking the law.
All right. We're going to have public comment. I say this every time, and I'm going to say it again. This is a time for the public to inform the school board of their thoughts. Every person gets 3 minutes. Every person has a right to speak. Every person has a right to their opinion. There will be no heckling. There will be no comments back. You will be asked to leave. I understand that we are in a very charged time. The school board completely understands that there are people with varying opinions from end to end on this issue. We will be respectful of one another, and we will give each person that wishes to have their 3 minutes, their 3 minutes. The school board is listening, and we do want to hear what our community says. But once again, please be respectful of one another as fellow citizens, as fellow humans. Thank you very much. I am going to open the floor for public comment. Once again, every person gets 3 minutes. Hi. Oh, thank you. Yes, please do sign in and then state your name on your comments, before your comments.
My name is Faye Kobierski, and I have 2 children at Memorial School. My daughter is in 3rd grade, and my son is in 1st. I have fought for my son to be accepted into preschool program through the school district due to his speech issue, and I will continue to fight for my kids as long as I breathe this air. I was once told to be careful what I say to the district if I plan to keep my kids in Tinley School District. I, of course, would never want, nor would I ever expect, my actions to be taken out on my kids. But as we all know, it happens every day in all areas. I fought and still fight for additional help for my little guy because that's what I'm supposed to do as a parent. Memorial staff has been amazing at helping my little guy and granting additional speech sessions to accommodate my request. So thank you, Memorial, for all you've done. I now am asking and will fight for a normal day in school. My son does not even remember not wearing a mask in school. My daughter, who does, wants to stand up for what she believes and not wear a mask, but does not want to upset her teachers and school staff whom she looks up to. Why are we allowing our kids to feel these crazy feelings of anxiety and confusion? What happened to being free and teaching our kids that we live in America and we are a free country? Why do we teach our students about slavery and the American Revolution and Constitution if we are not standing up for it ourselves? Please, teachers of our district, I know you love our babies because you show us every day by teaching them and helping them grow. It has been almost 3 years of this. I urge you to help us parents free our children and make life normal again for them. Fight for our kids. Show us they matter. We can still be safe, keep the distance, but allow our kids to breathe fresh air rather than their own recycled air. Think about the kids with asthma and the kids with other disadvantages. Help us. We need your help. Help us stand united for the kids to show our kids how to lead and not to follow. Thank you.
My name's Kim Saraki. Dr. Staywick, why are we even here? For what? There is nothing to discuss. The court ruled on Friday, February 4th, that Pritzker Isby IDPH emergency rules are null and void. Of course, Pritzker filed an appeal. We were counting on it. So until the appeal is ruled on, you are breaking the law. Actually, you have been for the last 2 years, blindly following unconstitutional mandates. But that's a conversation for another day. No more. No more masks, no more testing, and no more quarantine for our kids. You have showed us your true colors the moment you muzzled our kids, or should I say your political stance. There is no room for politics in the classroom, period. That all ends today. No more. Now is the time for the board members that we, the people, have elected to finally stand up to all this nonsense and let the parents decide what is best for our children. This is not a one-size-fits-all. Every family is different on their beliefs, and rightfully so, but it's our decision, not yours. Dr. Staywick, you stole that choice from us, and that will not be forgotten. This is my family, not yours or the dictator who calls himself governor. Stop this overreach, abuse of power, and unmask our children.
Good afternoon. My name's Karen, and I've been a teacher in 146 for over 20 years. I wish to keep the mitigation measure of staff and students wearing masks during the school day. This practice has allowed us to stay in person with few outbreaks and low contamination numbers. As we all know, staying in person is vital for our students. However, the district has begun to have an even greater shortage of substitutes than we had before COVID hit, and I fear that by removing mitigation measures, we will not have the staff to remain open, and more people will fall ill. We will be faced with outbreaks and be forced back into remote learning. Please consider the effects removing masks will have on our students, our staff, and on the community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Kaiser, and I'm a second grade teacher here at Fulton School. I do have concerns with the quick change overturn that could possibly happen within the next 24 hours. I'm expressing my hope that our school board, families, and staff can work together in the next few weeks to transition to masks becoming more optional if that is a valid safety recommendation. Also, I believe at the beginning of the school year, the board had talked about putting different things into place, and then as numbers decreased, we would start removing some of those safety precautions when possible. Well, yes, the numbers are coming down, and maybe even by spring break, we could lift these masks. However, after this weekend's ruling, we might be going from all safety measures in one place to none in a matter of 24 hours. I stand up here still believing that we can work together to make the in-person instruction the top priority for our students with keeping students and staff healthy. Please consider taking some time before making a decision this evening. I teach my students about empathy and respect in our social emotional lessons, and that's my next target. If the decision is going to give families and staff the freedom to wear a mask or not, my request is that for everyone to think about respecting each other and whatever their wishes are in regards to wearing a mask or not, as we proceed in our educational buildings. The goal here was to, again, keep students in person for learning, and my continued goal is to give each child that I work with the best education possible, as does everyone in District 146. We have been able to stay in person full day for so far for this school year with struggles, yes. But I would hope that each and every one of us would continue to respect whatever child or adult does as they walk into a school building. I am who I am in my profession, and I'm going to do everything possible to ensure that my students understand that we have rights and the need to respect each other's opinions, but peacefully. So if your child or staff comes, or if a child or staff come to school without a mask, I will respect that, and so should everyone without judgment. We talk and teach about respecting everyone, no matter the color of their skin, the color of their hair, and this is just another life example that I'm asking all adults to help their children respect whatever decisions others have. Right now, I will continue to wear my mask. I'm vaccinated, and I did get COVID over break, which didn't allow me to go see my son who lives in Florida. So I do plan on seeing him in March, which means that I don't want to risk seeing him again. For that reason, I will continue to also wear my mask, not to show my power in wearing a mask, but for my own personal beliefs. My daughter went into her high school today wearing her mask because she is hoping to go to state for bowling and doesn't want to get COVID, which would not allow her to
30
bowl.
seconds.
As a mother, I'm hoping that she does not get bullied. So everyone be kind, be respectful, and you don't know why someone isn't doing or wearing a mask. Remember to be respectful to the decisions that are made among our community and our staff and our country. Thank you.
So good evening. I'm Sharon Stephan. I've been teaching the district for 25 years. I come before you, and I've been watching you for 2 years now. And I think I have a personal connection because, as you know, my husband spent 97 days in the hospital on an ECMO machine and on a ventilator. And it's a miracle that he's alive and a year on oxygen. No pre-existing conditions. He'll be the first to admit his fault for not wearing a mask at work. He contracted it in April of 2020. I don't know what this will do to him. Yes, he's vaccinated, he's boosted. I don't know what it'll do to him. What about our children that are compromised immune? They cannot do this. They cannot sit in a room without masks. If they get COVID, they could die. They could end up like him in the hospital. We don't think, we're a full inclusion district, which means everybody's in that classroom with us. We have children that this will kill. My sister-in-law is a nurse at the Christ, and she says they have the body truck outside for the COVID people that are dying. They're not all old. A lot of them are young. And so before you make your decision, I would like you to take some time and think about our unvaccinated children, because at least half my class is unvaccinated. And so think about them. Think about our children in this full inclusion district that are compromised immune. My first graders have no idea they have a mask on. A lot of times they're trying to eat snack, and I say, you have to take the mask down. They have no idea. I'm in the car for 10 minutes before I realize it's still on. When you wear it all day, it becomes part of you. We make our day wonderful for our first graders. We really do. And they really don't make a big deal out of this mask. It's the adults that do. And so I just ask you, before you make your decision, think about our immune-compromised children. Think about the staff, because this is directly affected by us. And I welcome anyone to come into my classroom and spend the day with unvaccinated, unmasked children. And see how you're going to do that within 3 feet, because a small group, one-on-one. I don't feel comfortable doing that if they're unvaccinated, unmasked. This is dangerous to us as the staff. Thank you.
Hello. I wanted to follow her comments because our son is one of those kids. He has vulnerability. So being in a classroom with kids who aren't wearing masks puts his life at risk, okay? So that's been our position all along, that it's not a fair risk, putting your life on the line for education. It's just not a fair equation. I want to just mention, as the previous director for the section of litigation for the American Bar Association, I spent 8 years working with litigators. I am paying attention to these court cases. This is the first serve in a tennis match. The ball is just gone over the court. It's coming back. When we look at the North Allegheny-Pittsburgh case, that's a prime example of what's going to happen here, okay? So you've got a case that's asked you to remove the mitigations, okay? But families then sued under the ADA Act, the American with Disabilities Act, refusing to take necessary steps to allow disabled or vulnerable children so that they can safely and equally access their education is a direct conflict with the ADA, and that was struck down. Okay, so the ball is coming back. There is the class action for the parents with kids like mine is happening. That's going to happen. That's what's going to happen next, okay? And it sucks. And I am tired of being scared for my little boy every day. Right now, it's kind of tolerable. It won't be tolerable if half the school's not wearing masks. We will have to find another pathway, and right now, that does not exist. There is no pathway for us where we can opt in to an all-vaccinated, all-masked population of students. That's just not available right now. It's a problem. We're able to participate in the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra, where those things exist. Everybody submits their vaccine card, everybody shows up with masks, they card at the door. Okay? So there are different models, and we need and deserve that pathway. I understand there's people who want the wild, wild west, and they want the freedom, I get it. But we deserve a pathway for safety and the ability to sleep at night. I'm tired of the anxiety every day, and he is too. Please care about us. Thank you.
Hello. I wanted to follow up with that too, because I also have a child who is immunocompromised. My name is Alicia Giamona, and I'm a 5th grade teacher here at FIRC. And by coincidence, today starts the Congenital Heart Disease Awareness, hence my mask. And as many of you know, in 2017, my daughter Liliana was born with a life-threatening congenital heart defect. And at that time, Dr. Stavick and the board, you guys were so supportive of my family. You let me take an emergency indefinite leave to take care of my infant that was having emergency open heart surgery. She is thriving now, but she is still immunocompromised. She turned 5 2 weeks ago. She received her first COVID shot on her birthday. She was excited. Because it means that she can be more protected, and we do not have to worry about her possibly dying from COVID, which her cardiologist has put in our minds, has told us, has showed us data that COVID would kill her. I am doing my part. My children are masked. I got her vaccinated the minute she was eligible. My 8-year-old
got vaccinated the minute she was eligible. I have a 3-year-old who is not yet eligible, but will be vaccinated the minute she can. Their schools dropped masks today. My kids went to school with masks. We had a very long conversation with them about wearing masks. I had a very long conversation with their teachers who promised to wear masks for my child, and for their families as well. Other than getting vaccinated, wearing masks is the best scientifically proven way to prevent COVID spread. I fear dropping all of these mitigations all at once and then going into a classroom. I'm wearing my mask to protect you. I'm wearing my mask to protect my students. I need them and my colleagues to wear their masks to protect me, therefore protect my daughter. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about my daughter. And I'm worried about my other students. I don't want to have to choose between my biological children at home and the children that I love at school that are my students. I'm not opposed to dropping masks when it's safe. I don't think that it is safe yet. We talked about rolling back one at a time. Please consider doing that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Steck. I am an educator at District 146. I wish to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because my family knows firsthand the realities of COVID. 97, that's the number of days that my father-in-law spent in a hospital bed. 7, those are the number of weeks that he spent in a medically induced coma. Unmasking our children could mean the possibility of bringing something home to him that he cannot survive. I myself, along with many others in our building, are immunocompromised. What happens when there are so many teachers out that we cannot support these children? We as teachers, paraprofessionals, and specialists are doing all that we can to protect these kids, and I would really hope that the board would step up to do the same for us. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Benz. I am a resident and a voter in District 146. I am also a registered nurse, employed by the district for the past 16 and a half years to care for the students of Furick School according to well-accepted principles of nursing practice. I would like to make a few brief points. First, science is not just a series of courses that we teach to our students in District 146. It is something that we nurses live by and try to model for the good of our students and for the common good of all. Second, as a healthcare professional, based upon my review of the relevant medical literature, it is my firm opinion that masking helps to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Lifting our current mask policy will lead to significantly higher levels of COVID-19 transmission among children and staff. I also offer copies of this medical literature. I understand that these are difficult decisions that the board must face, but I would ask that any future policy being considered understand that the health office is very similar to any current health clinic. Any person, student or an adult, who walks into a health clinic must wear a mask for both the protection of the patient and the staff. I'm not aware of any health clinic that has changed this policy. We nurses are still obligated to act upon and isolate students that are positive and probable. In my office, I will continue to follow good nursing practice and wear masks as required for the health and safety of the students. And I ask that anyone entering my office for an assessment wear a mask for the protection of me as well. I will be happy to place a box of masks right outside my office. Thank you for your cooperation.
I'm just going to put initials. Good evening. It's nice to see you all. My name is Terry Sharpell, and I am the physical education teacher at FERC. I've been with the district 25 years, and it's taken a lot of courage for me to get up here because I truly feel and understand everybody's opinion, and I hope that I don't alienate any parents, any teachers by making what I'd like to say to you all as far as it is concerning to me. And again, as a PE teacher, I am in favor of mask optional. In my gym, I am teaching physical activity, and students simply cannot do as well with a mask. Students frequently have to stop and take breathing breaks, and they know that's part of PE. They can do that, but they're not able to do 100% seriously what they can do without masks. Secondly, masks make it difficult to communicate, and the students are unable to pick up on those nonverbal facial expressions. And so a lot of instruction is missed in my gym. Again, I'm speaking from my opinion in my gym and what I see in my gym. So for that reason, I am in favor of making mask optional. And I appreciate you listening. And again, I hope I have not alienated any colleagues or staff or parents. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Jill Hooton, and my sons attend Ferrick Education Center. They're in kindergarten and in second grade. Today I'm asking that we make the right decision for our children. We saw hundreds of kids today walking into their schools with no masks and smiling faces. They were all so excited to be able to see their friends and actually enjoy each other and not have to wonder what the person next to them looks like and if they're smiling and interacting with them, you know, the way that they had hoped. I've told my boys that one of the best things about living in America is our freedom of choice, except for the past 2 years, we've had no choice. People say that kids have been wearing masks for months and that they don't complain. It's the parents that do this. And they don't complain because they've been taught to listen to authority figures. When I've told them that they didn't have to wear masks in certain places, they've asked if they're going to get in trouble. Not too long ago, they thought that if they didn't wear a mask, they were going to get someone else sick and that that person would die. And the thought of my kindergartner having to bear that broke my heart. He literally thought if he walked in anywhere, he could make someone die. And I understand that there are people that are immunocompromised, and I 100% advocate for a choice. You can have a choice to wear a mask, as my healthy child can have a choice not to wear a mask and not have to go to bed at night thinking that he's going to make the person next to him die. You're mistaking their compliance. The reason that they are is because they want to listen to their teachers. They want to listen to the people that they think they're supposed to listen to, but they don't want to wear the masks. And they say it to me every day, "Mommy, why do we have to keep doing this?" And at this point, 2 years into this, I don't have an answer for them. We frighten them into wearing them. And so I hope that we can do the right thing and give them the choice that they have the right to have in America. There are 38 states that do not have this mandate. So how is it that they're able to get through all of this, but we're still masking our children? Give us our choice back. And they would also like to talk. Can you say your name? What would you like to say?
I am Lopez, and I'm sick of wearing masks.
What grade are you in, buddy?
First, no, kindergarten.
Okay, Owen?
My name is Owen Hooton. I'm in second grade. I'm sick of these masks because they get wet from your breathing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shane Wilson. I'm also sick of masks. I really am. They're not fun. They're not pleasant. No one enjoys them. You know, what's also not enjoyable is being afraid for your health, being afraid for your life. We're talking about choice. Here's the choice that you're potentially offering my son. The choice to go back to a school with students who are not masked, with students who are not traced, with students who are very likely going to bring in the COVID-19 virus, and you're putting my son in the choice of having to decide which one of his classmates might get him sick. That's the choice you're offering. Fear and anxiety. There's still a pandemic, you know. The numbers are down. Guess what? Those numbers are still as high as they were a year ago. They're down from even higher. You are asking my son to be willing to endanger his health to get an education. You are saying that fear and endangerment is a prerequisite to get an education. I disagree with that notion. And I'm not the only one. Lockport 205, Palace Heights 218, Kirby 140, Summit Hill 161, Bremen 228, Calumet City 155, Chicago 99, all school districts near us who have decided that these mitigations are worth keeping because they keep us safe, because they keep us healthy. I have been attending these meetings since the summer of 2020. I have absolutely no illusions about what's going to happen. This board has been vehemently anti-mitigation from the beginning. The first meeting I went to, we were talking about 6 feet. Couldn't we make it 2? Remember, this board have bragged about getting COVID and how it's no big deal. I know what's going to happen, but I'm asking you to consider what choice you are giving to me and my family, what choice you are giving to my son. How can I, in good conscience, ask him to go to school, in a school that is not looking out for his well-being, in a school that has decided the Wild West is the way to go? Take your chances. Freedom. We had a meeting in November 2020 where we jettisoned the full remote process, and at the time there were parents who commented, well, this board doesn't care about our kids. And you objected to that. You objected to that vehemently. Dr. Staywick, in particular, gave a speech about how offended he was by that notion that you don't care about our
30
kids.
seconds.
But here's where the rubber meets the road. If you abandon these mitigations that have worked for this period of time, this bare minimum of mitigation, and you put nothing else in place, if you do nothing to look out for the students who are concerned, for the families that are endangered, then the proof is in the pudding. This is the moment when you decide how much you really do care about all your kids, as your oath as a school board member indicates you ought to.
Time's up.
Hi, my name is Eileen, and I'm an educator with District 146, and I've been for the last 10 years, and for many years before that, subbing as well. I reached out to a pediatrician, a renowned pediatrician from Northwestern, and she texted me some information that she thought would be helpful to share. My name is Erin Klein, and I'm a pediatrician affiliated with Northwestern Children Lurie's Hospital. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the largest body representing pediatricians across the state, updated its critical COVID-19 guidance for safe schools and promotion of in-person learning this January. It mentioned several key school policies on mitigation strategies in order to not spread the virus. These included universal masking in school with an emphasis on indoor masking for all students older than 2 years and all school staff with well-fitting face masks. In addition, staying home when sick with new symptoms and isolating, getting tested if possible. As a pediatrician, I've taken care of Chicagoland youth with critical illnesses from COVID-19. I've seen previously healthy adolescents come in seizing. Watching the parents process that their child may never have a normal brain again is the doctor's place a breathing tube. I've watched my young patients cry, not understanding why their parents are not in with them in the hospital, not comprehending that both parents were also hospitalized. And I've sent my patient with Down syndrome to the intensive care unit when he could no longer breathe on his own, a fate all too common for some of our medically complex youth. Our children have been traumatized by the past 2 years, many losing parents, grandparents, aunts, or uncles who should still be here. Children thrive on consistency, and we owe it to them to be consistent in our recommendations with the science. Masks are a safe and effective way to lower transmission of COVID-19. As educators, school officials, school nurses, and physicians, all of us are collectively entrusted with the privilege of keeping our children safe. Because when a child is forever disabled or lost to this virus, it's unfathomable. We owe it to our children to keep schools as safe as possible, and that means continuing the evidence-based mitigation strategies put forth by the AAP. I realize that there's a lot of parents, both here and in our community, that don't have children who are compromised medically or in any other COVID-related way. And I understand that they passionately feel about their rights. And I'm big on the Constitution too. But while it provides for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they put life first. And I feel that one of the reasons we've been so successful in our district is that
30 seconds.
Thanks. Is that you put forth these measures to keep us safe. And I think that until we have a better feel for where this entire situation is going, the ruling should not be the only thing that governs us. What's worked for us in the past should not be something we just abandon, especially because our most vulnerable kids are still the same kids. They're still the kids that need extra help. And I think that as a community, we all should be trying to look out for all of them. Thank you.
My name is Mary, and I'm an educator in District 146. I'm also a resident and voter as well. I would like to start by thanking District 146 for educating my children. I have never been so proud as I was this afternoon to receive a text from my son, who's at a school that has dropped masks now that he's graduated from District 146. He was very concerned because he had a teacher who revealed last week to her class she has cancer. She's in need of surgery and will be having that soon. He was terrified for her. Every single student in his classroom in that period wore a mask. And I could not have been more proud. Those of you who know my children have many things of which to be proud of, but oh my gosh, empathy and courtesy and kindness are something they learned and was support for helping to instill that in my children. I hope that's a tradition that we can continue in this district. When it is time to remove mitigation strategies, I respectfully ask that the Board of Education peel back our mitigation layers gradually, because seemingly simple changes are rarely ever simple in practice and often lead to unintended consequences for kids. I ask that those who are in the schools daily be a genuine part of that planning so that unintended effects are avoided by working together. I know many of my students and their family situations. I know what sending particular children maskless can mean for some families. Contrastly, I also know what sitting next to an unmasked student could mean to the families of other particular students who would remain masked. We need time to hear from our families so that we can plan and care for all of them. We can do better by creating not only a plan, but a plan with mutual respect and concern for all. Please let us make a gradual, thoughtful, and intentional transition, one that is respectful, nurturing, and caring for all of our students and their families. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ken Price. I'm a parent at Memorial. I'm also an educator at a school for children with autism. I can tell you this, in Tinley Park, Omicron kicked our ass. We were down a third of our staff, 40% of our students, and we had full mitigation. But if any of you've worked in special needs, you understand the difficulty of masks. But it's all been said. Everything that I was going to say has been said. One thing that we haven't really talked about is your teachers. What are their opinions? Where do they fall on these masks? Yes, the parents are the voters, but what about your teachers? You're employing them. And if we keep going the way we're going in education, we are losing teachers like crazy. How many are short paras? How many? There you go, short paras. Probably short 3 or 4. You know, how many teachers have had to take their lunches off?
This is for you to speak to the
I know,
board,
exactly.
not to-
I'm just saying it out rhetorically. They don't have to answer. If people want to raise their hands, well, that's what we've been taught to do. But if they do, they do. But either way, we take away these mitigations just like that, you're going to start losing teachers to districts that are actually going to have those mitigations. It's not just going to be about pay. It's going to be about the safety of them and their families. That's one of the things you guys have got to factor in here. You know, they're going to walk on you. And as a union, they may even strike. So you have to think about, you have to take that into effect as well. You're putting their lives at risk, not just the kids, but their lives. Mr. Lloyd, I know you are adamantly against masks, but you even said you'd be interested in walking it back. I'd like you to keep your word. And if we are going to walk it back, walk it back. Don't just take everything away. You said that. And the rest of you agreed to that. We should look at it and maybe possibly walk it back. I don't think now is the time to walk it back, but I think that when we do get to that point, we should slowly walk it back. Because if you take everything away, the floor's going to fall out from under us. And we could be in a worse situation than we already are. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Gonzalez. I sat quiet until I heard this gentleman speak. And I'm a healthcare worker, and there's no way I would ever threaten, like as he did, saying that teachers would threaten a strike. I would never do that to my patients and threaten not to come to work because I felt I wasn't being treated fairly. So we're at this, nobody's really bringing up the point that this was a law that was put into place. So for those that believe that masks work, wear the masks. But give the people that don't want to wear the mask that option, like other districts have been doing, like mask optional. And so if these teachers and students feel that they work, then wear your mask and move on, and they work. And let the people choose not to wear the ones that they don't want to wear them. That makes sense? But I do not like that threatening teachers to threaten a strike. I thought it was about our children. So striking is not about our children. Healthcare workers didn't strike. We went to work. We've been working since the very first day. I've been at work since that day. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm just also going to leave my initials because my dominant hand is down. It's rather sloppy, but some of you know who I am. Sarah Lopez. I have 3 kids in the district, 1 at Central and 2 at Fulton. As educators, I assume it's your job to make sure that our children are not fearful, not fearless, and also fearless. As parents, it's our job to make sure that they are not fearful of just to go outside, to be around people, to be around others that are not wearing a mask, people who are wearing a mask. It's our job to show them respect. It's also an educator's job to show them respect. My children are taught that if someone chooses differently than them, they will respect their views. They'll respect their decisions. I am in my choice here, as always has been, the masks should be optional, always. It should be a child's choice, and my heart breaks hearing all of these stories of these immunized people who have been terribly ill, these cancer patients, all of these people that have been very, very terribly struck by this disease, and all of these ways that this has hurt them. It has hurt my family. It has hurt many families, and it continues to hurt many families. My children were afraid to do what they felt was the right thing to do today because they were afraid of being in trouble. We are instilling fear more than we are educating our children on arithmetic and English and science and being active in gym class. My children are not a fan of the mask. They never have been. They hate wearing it, especially during their gym class. And extracurricular sports at Central, are you kidding? They'd be more uncomfortable than they would be engaged in the extracurricular physical activities that they could participate in, should they be given the right, should they be given the choice. It should be a choice. Just like going to school, if you're ill, my child would not do that ever. Pre-COVID days, that was never an option for my child. That wasn't an option then, why would it be an option now? Because it should be, it's a choice, and it's common sense. What happened to common sense? Did that just suddenly get thrown out the window with this
30 seconds.
COVID-19, whatever we want to call it? My hope is that this becomes optional and that we can continue to try to be kind to one another and, yeah, we can be kind.
Hello, my name is Mark Gonzalez. I just want to say everything I'm hearing up here is about how the
Excuse me, sir, can you sign in, please?
Oh, yes, sorry. How the unmasked has to abide by the mask. And the idea of an option is out of the table. But yet, when this mandate came in, everyone here on the board was quick to jump on the mandate and say, hey, you have to do this. What's going to change? If Pritzker comes out next week and says, you know what, masks off. What's the difference? What's going to stop anything from just saying, okay, now what's going to, you're still going to have people that are still going to be fearful for whatever condition, medical, and I feel for anybody with any medical conditions with that, but there is no magic word. Everyone's quick to jump on the bandwagon with this mandate, emergency order, but now the mandate is technically stricken. It's on pause. So I don't even see you guys even have an option with the children walking in the building without a mask if they choose not to do it, because you have to offer them due process. You guys have to do something to accommodate their education, even if they show up without a mask underneath this law, or the stricken, or the pause of this law. I'm also in construction, so my whole life has a set of forms of risk assessment. So every job I do I have to assess the possibility. We wear safety gear and do safety things, but there's certain things that you just can't do it. You just have to get the job done. I was also told, a nice quote, I don't know exactly who said it, but fear is natural, courage is an option. It's a choice. So that's the thing, you can sit here and let this drag out, but what is the magic word? What's gonna be the situation that says, hey, that's it, we're done? Because there's still gonna be somebody else that's still gonna say, no, I still want them, I still want it. My wife works in medical care. She was essential until they wanted to fire everyone for not getting vaccinated. Construction workers, look at the truck drivers, going through the same thing. They're fighting for that. That's what our children want. Our children just want to be children and raised. Teachers care, but the fact that teachers are threatening to possibly, I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying the idea that teachers would even consider doing something like that, when the vaccination, hey, follow the science. It's supposed to solve everything. And if you're vaxxed, it protects you. It protects you if you're underlying conditions. That's what that vaccination does. If you believe in it, then you're safe. Wear your mask if you feel you have to. That's it. It's just common sense. You can sit there and live your whole life in fear all you want, but nothing's going to change. You choose to drive on an expressway.
30 seconds.
There is a possibility. All I'm saying is give the children the option to decide what they want to do. Let the family decide what they want to do. That's it. But there's never going to be a magic word that says, hey, let's go back to normal. Let's start now.
think we all need to remember that.
Excuse me, sir, can you sign in, please?
Sure can. I
And
think
state-
we all
and
need to
state your
remember.
name, sorry.
Joel Button.
Thank you.
I think we all need to remember that the choice has already been delivered. The judge says it's illegal. Can't force somebody to do something against their will.
My name is Brett Johnstone. I wanted to second what the gentleman back there said and the gentleman prior to me. Like he said, it's risk assessment. That's really what it boils down to. My heart goes out to the people who have been affected. I've been affected as well. Other people have. But at the end of the day, where is the stop button? You said yourself, Dr. Stawick, you said in your last meeting on January 3rd that you were going to talk to the other superintendents and find out what was going to happen, what they were all going to do. I got news for you. They don't run this school. You do. 146 and this board is supposed to make the decisions what's best for our children and our community. These are our kids. These are our parents that are here. These are the ones that pay the taxes for us to be here and for us to go to these schools. I want you to step forward and do what's right for our children and what's right for us and what our schools are. Each school is different, and our district is the one that has to decide what to do. And is Pritzker going to push the magic button and say, no more? Then what do we do? I know you guys can't answer that because this isn't a question and answer. This is a panel in that, but make the right decision. Make a decision based on our communities and based on our schools and our children. Take them into consideration. Take the parents into consideration because after all, we're the ones that donate to the schools. We're the ones that volunteer for the fundraisers and all that too. The other districts aren't doing that. We are. Risk assessment, just please take that into consideration. And if they want to be optional, let them be optional. Some of these kids don't like it, some of the kids do. That's all I can say. Have a nice day.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Ellis. I am a healthcare professional, mother of 3, and...
Could you sign in?
Yes, thanks. And between my 2 oldest kids, they have attended Cruz Memorial, Fulton. One is now at Furick, and one is now here at Central. This is a very difficult situation, and I respect you guys for plowing through this as much as you guys have. I am very thankful for all the educators as well as other healthcare providers who have stuck with it at this point in time. However, it does come down to a few other things. My middle one, it was diagnosed with autism, practically childhood apraxia. He has a lot to say. However, the words do not come out. Right now, it has been very difficult for the kids to even understand him with another mask on, let alone the other teachers or adults around. Not everyone, I think we forgot that a smile is probably one of the simplest forms of positive reinforcement. That is not seen. That has not been seen for the last 2 years. There is the choice of a vaccination, and let that be a choice. If the mask wants to be worn, if the mask or a vaccination be done, that is their choice. Personally, I do not see that happening for my 5-year-olds. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on medical care at this point and treatment plans, and I do not know what COVID would do to his brain, whether the vaccine or the actual virus itself. And at this point, I am personally going to go with natural immunity, doing better than having the injection. With the kids running a gym, have you ran a mile with a mask on? Have you? Because that's what is happening here at Central, or lots of it, or so I've been told. have, or high rates of exertion.
30 seconds.
They have been going through. My daughter wore it below her nose to catch her breath. And as soon as she walked out into the hallway, she was told to raise it back up. Give them a breather at some point in time. We do need to have an exit plan. And if you want to keep other mitigations in place as far as distancing, so be it. But let the mask and the vaccination be optional. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Pizarro, and I have a student here at Central, and I have 2 at 2:30. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. I think that's where we're at. I am in complete support of providing the parents the choice to parent their children, to administer medical choices, masking choices, involvement in extracurricular activities, travel choices, whatever it may be, accepting those risks that come with the choices that I make for my child. No one else is responsible for the well-being of my child. I am. Me. I allow my child to participate in extracurricular activities for social well-being, mental health, and just to be able to be around his peers, their peers. And they're fortunate enough that they can do all of that. And I understand that's not something that is afforded to everyone, and I feel for those. But the choice has to remain in the hands of the parent. I'm not saying roll back everything, stop all mitigations. I'm not. Please allow the parents to make the choice for their children, or better yet, ask the children. Let them help in this decision. This is affecting them. The letter from 230 Superintendent to Governor Pritzker recently said he had more absences, drug, alcohol, anxiety, suicidal events than he had from COVID. 230 is a massive district. It encompasses many areas and many, many children. Continuing to mandate things on these children teaches them that they don't have a voice and that they don't have a choice. That's not what we do. That's not what our education system is about. So please, I implore you to take that into consideration and allow the parents the freedom and the right that God gave them when they gave those children to them. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Alicia Koster, and I have a 4th grade student at Memorial. This past summer, we took my son on a trip to South Dakota. We thought it would be a great trip for him to see our country, to find out why we live in the country we do, and that we're proud of our country. And I thought it was important for him to learn about freedom and to go and see our wonderful presidents that are up there on Mount Rushmore. While we were there, we came in contact with hundreds, if not thousands, of fellow Americans that were there to enjoy our presidents and enjoy our freedom. I want my child to live in freedom and not suppressed in tyranny. Unmask our children and make it optional.
Any further public comment? Hearing none. Moving on. 4.1. Oh, sorry. Okay. That's fine.
My name is Sylvia Stroka, and I am in Fierik and Central. I vote. I can tell that I am for optional. Then we can choose the rights of mask wearing or not. And I'm sorry, my English is not so good, but I hope. I was born in Poland, and we have very long history of not freedom. And I think USA is supposed to be a freedom country. My kids are raised, then they should be freedom, not going back like the World War II or something like that. But I hope everybody can choose what to do, how to live that life, and how everybody said, we are responsible for those kids. I know you are feeling being responsible, but let them choose to. Thank you.
My name's Dorothy. I'm a educator from Fierik. I'm on both sides of this. If the parents could see what we're subjected to when masks are off, more airborne things going through, snots, phlegm, everything flowing. And it's reality. We're covered in it, you know, and masks are off, we're going to be subjected to it again. I have anxiety wearing my mask at work. I have to because I'm a cancer survivor and an open heart patient survivor. But it's the right thing to do. You know, I get it, but sometimes being a parent, it sucks. And you got to stand up and do the right thing and say, I'm sorry, but this is what we got to do now because it's for the good of people's health. That's all.
Okay, one more time. Any further public comment?
Hi, board. Hi, everyone. I was watching the meeting at home and listening to everybody. Everybody had great points. My opinion is leave it to the students. My son comes home from gym. Well, after having gym, he can't breathe. His face is all marked up. Dad, I can't breathe. I know, but this is what we have to do. There's fears all around. There's dangers every day of our life. You can get hit by a car. Anything can happen at any point, but when will the point be to not wear masks? COVID is here for the long haul. It's never gonna go away, so does that mean wear masks forever? That can't be the case. There should be an option for students to wear them or not to wear them. If kids feel comfortable wearing them, let them wear them. If they don't, don't. I've had COVID. We've had a family member die from COVID, so I understand both sides. My mother-in-law was immunocompromised, so she had cancer, she had plenty of medical issues. So I understand the feeling on both sides. But it has to come to a point where it will stop. The kids need to breathe free air, as well as part of going to school is a social interaction. How are they learning or seeing the interaction from other students when they're behind a mask? They can't. I heard a parent earlier say about the smile, or if somebody's angry or upset or has anxiety. How are the kids gonna know when they're hidden behind the mask? It is a free country. People are free to do as they please, to a point. But when it comes to COVID, this has been going on long enough, and it's gonna be here. So as I said, does that mean mask forever? It can't be the case. Thank you very much.
No, we're not doing. Okay. All right, seeing no more public comment, we're moving on. 4.1, union report.
We are Julie Harris and Karen Lyons, and we're together to represent 320 union staff members of District 146. In the letter that we submitted to the board over the weekend, we presented you with the results of a survey given to the staff, and in those results is stated that 69% of the union members ask that the mask mandate continue to be implemented in our school until the science tells us that it's safe to remove them. And 73% of our union members are in favor of supporting CDC and IDPH guidelines requiring close contacts to isolate after exposure to COVID. We shared these and other survey statistics with you in order for you to understand where our educators are coming from, with hopes that you can gain some perspective into our reality. We also share this data with you because we, as educators, we use data every day. We use it to guide our teaching, to make sound instructional decisions that are best interest in our students. We use the data to accelerate some of our students, to slow them down, to reteach some of our students, to scrap a lesson, or to put that gold star on the lesson because the data told us so. Tonight, we ask that the board do the same thing. Use health data to inform their decision to unmask our students. For nearly 2 years now, the board, for the most part, has agreed to follow the science to protect our staff and students, and we appreciate that. Why should that change now? We, as frontline workers, deserve the respect of this board to keep us and our students safe. We are frontliners because we work side by side with our students. Majority of them cannot even be 3 feet apart. So the 3 feet apart rule, we're sometimes not even utilizing it.
As of this morning, Cook County was still considered at warning level regarding case counts per 100,000. This is meaningful data that should be at the forefront when you make this decision. We are incredibly hopeful as we see the numbers decreasing daily that masks and other mitigations can soon be eased. Very soon, we hope. But we are not there yet. Once the scientific data supports unmasking, we will support that decision. But at this time, we cannot support removing masks and other mitigation measures. It is unfortunate that the courts are making this decision in some districts and are not considering that data. This district was not named in the TRO and therefore should continue to follow the prescribed public health protocols, which have proven to reduce school exclusion rates and have made it possible for our students to continue learning safely and in person. Poor legal reasoning and a quorum of a school board that wants masks removed should not take one of our most effective tools off the table. What message will we send our students if tomorrow we unmask and a week from now the TRO is overturned and the mitigations revert to what they are now? How confusing to put our little ones in the middle of that battle. We are respectfully asking that this board continue to stay the course for hopefully just a few more weeks, and together we can show support for the safety of our students as well as our teachers.
We have several educators who are unable to attend tonight, but would like their thoughts to be shared with the board. I'm going to start. I am an educator in District 146. I just want to teach. Mask or no mask, I wish to educate the students in my classroom with the support and respect of all parents and the community.
I am an educator in District 146, and I wish to keep the mitigation in schools. The number of COVID cases are still rising, and as an educator, the safety of all of our children and coworkers are a priority in the health and welfare of our schools, students, and staff.
I am an educator in District 146. I would like the Board of Education to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because COVID-19 is still spreading rapidly throughout our population, and the current mask and social distancing measures help minimize its spread.
I am unable to attend the board meeting because I am working my second job this evening. I am an educator in District 146. I would like the Board of Ed to keep the mitigation measures in our school because the United States has just crossed over 900,000 deaths due to COVID-19. Also, my mother is 70 years old, which is a vulnerable population for this virus. I don't want to be the reason why she gets sick and perhaps could die.
I am an educator in District 146. I would like the Board of Education to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because I believe in-person learning is the best type of learning that we can provide. I fear that reducing mitigations in our schools would cause the spread of COVID-19 along with other illnesses and lead to unnecessary illnesses for students and staff and their families. I also fear that if our schools experience an outbreak, we would have to revert to e-learning for an indefinite period of time. Our kids learn best and our teachers teach the best when we are in person. I ask that you consider leaving these mitigations in place so that we can continue in-person learning with minimal disruption through the end of 2021 to in 2022 school year.
I am an educator at District 146. I would like the Board of Education to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because I want to be with my students while learning, and all of our safety and well-being are top priority. Due to the highly contagious Omicron variant and countless experts saying that we are not there yet, I cannot fathom why removing the mitigation measures would even be considered at this date. School children and teachers have become political pawns in which simple public health measures are pitting a community against each other. And for what? We are a school district, an institution whose sole purpose is to do what's best for all children. Please choose science over personal emotions and do what's right by all of us.
I am an educator in District 146. I would like the Board of Education to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because it is safety. If safety is our number one priority, then removing the mitigations does not support that in any sense. Also, if continuing in-person learning and teaching is our priority, then removing the mitigations will certainly interfere with this. Staff and students with underlying conditions and/or family members at home with underlying conditions who already do not feel safe being here with the mitigations in place will absolutely not feel safe coming to school every day. Many of us, staff and students, have lost loved ones from this virus. Removing the mitigations is careless and dangerous. Let's continue to do the safest thing for students and staff.
I am an educator in District 146, and I wish to keep the mitigation measures of staff and students wearing masks during the school day. This measure has allowed us to remain with in-person learning, which is crucial for our students. We need to ensure that we take these measures to reduce the chance of outbreaks at our schools. Additionally, the district has begun to have a consistent substitute shortage, and I fear that by removing mitigation measures, the substitutes that we have may not be willing to come in anymore. Please consider the positive and negative effects removing masks will have on our students when making this pivotal decision.
I am an educator in District 146. I would like the Board of Education to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because as of Friday, February 4th, 2022, IDPH reported 10,070 new cases. At this time, it is unsafe to remove the mitigation measures currently in place in the best interest of students, educators, and the community. We recognize the value and importance of in-person learning, and in order to keep providing that instruction to students, both students and educators need to be protected from COVID-19 so that students are able to continue to attend classes in person. In addition, with the current substitute shortage impacting schools across America, we will not have enough personnel to provide adequate coverage in the event that a teacher becomes ill. It is essential that we continue to keep teachers safe as we realize the value that the educators bring to instruction and content. It is the best interest of the schools and community. I urge you to keep the current mitigation measures in place.
I am an educator in District 146. I would like the Board of Education to keep the mitigation measures in our schools because I interact with hundreds of students each day at CMS. And I would like to prevent illness so I can be at school each day to work with my students. Keeping my family safe and healthy is the most important thing to me. I understand that we cannot and should not wear masks forever, and it is time to begin discussions about the next steps in handling the pandemic. Perhaps we can begin by taking some baby steps towards removing mitigations like not quarantining symptom-free students. We can start removing one mitigation at a time so that we can monitor the impact before removing all mitigations at once. I would like to see the mask option connected to data and metrics in our areas and schools so we are masking or not masking when it makes sense.
I am an educator in District 146, and due to working with children closely and some are not masked, I would like to keep the mitigation measures in place. On a daily basis, we work with students 3 feet, mostly right next to them. This cannot be prevented, and the masks do not give that extra layer. If they're removed, they will not give that extra layer of protection. Put your clothes in our shoes. We have 20+ kids in a classroom for 6 to 7 hours a day. What is your reaction when someone coughs and or sneezes with a mask? None. Now, remove that mask. Do you want someone coughing or sneezing on you? The virus is still present in our community. Please consider walking in our shoes as you make your decision about the masks. Come into our classrooms for a full day, not just for a couple minutes. See how the kids, they have adjusted to the masks. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It took weeks of planning to open the school safely. Is there a plan in place once masks are removed? More mask breaks? How's the weather still cold outside? With the weather being cold outside, students are within 3 feet of each other. Let's make a plan together. The board, union, and parents together sitting down and planning.
I am an educator in District 146. My mother is dying of cancer and maybe has a few months at best to live. Being surrounded in a tight space by unmasked and unvaccinated students and staff can potentially end her life even sooner, and I would be the cause of this. If you vote to remove masks, while it is against the science to do so, I may need to consider taking a leave of absence to protect my family. This would be a huge disservice to my students and coworkers who would have to absorb my students due to lack of substitute teachers.
I am an educator in 146. I would like the board to keep mitigation measures in our schools because it is my only protection in the workplace. I am ineligible for further vaccinations, boosters due to a severe allergic reaction, and underlying conditions put me at a high risk, serious illness from COVID and a high risk for contracting long COVID.
I'm an educator in District 146. I was very sick with COVID, and it's been 3 weeks, and I'm still not back to normal. I did get it from school. 2 people I was around tested positive the day before my symptoms started. And then a student came back on the 5th day, still with symptoms. This is not fair. I think since we want kids in school and not to end up remote again, we need to keep current mitigations in place.
It's okay. Oh. I'm an educator in District 146. I believe it is safe to agree that we all have the best interests of students in mind, whether we are for or against mask wearing. I would like to remind the community that we have been able to keep the school day normalized by having students wear masks. Teachers have had the ability to allow students to work together in groups and collaborate because of the use of masks in the classroom. Masks have allowed students to socialize rather than sit isolated in rows, and not to mention to be at school rather than learning remotely. Wearing a mask has taught students that one does things for the good of the whole. Wearing a mask is protecting those that have weak or compromised immune systems. What will happen when the masks are removed? Are we ready for remote learning again? How will this interruption of education affect children socially and emotionally? Are we prepared for such consequences? Considering the teacher and substitute teacher shortage, can we afford to risk our staff? No one likes wearing a mask, but we do it for each other to keep our community safe.
I will end it with one more that was left on my door right before this meeting. I have been a classroom teacher in the district for almost 20 years. While I have seen many changes occur during my tenure in 146, making masks optional is not one I would like to see happen. You see, in my primary classroom, we work like a family. My students come to the back table for small group instruction in reading and math for at least 30 minutes every single day. Every single day. I work side by side with them at their desks, helping them become better writers, readers, mathematicians, and overall better critical thinkers. Every single day. Every single day I put those kids in my classroom first. When COVID first hit, I held a meeting for my students' parents via Zoom and shared tears with them over something we knew very little about. Now that we are smarter and more knowledgeable about the virus, it is time to continue to use what science has told us and keep masks on while indoors, especially when we cannot guarantee adequate social distancing, for example, in a school during instructional time. My students are happy. They love being in person. They are not upset about wearing a mask if it means they can participate in a school day that is not as normal as it can possibly be while keeping everyone safe and healthy. I do not see them having difficulty making connections with peers because they cannot see their mouths. I do not see students having a hard time understanding what I mean with my expressions, because if they don't understand, then I go over once again, sit side by side to explain or work with them to help them understand. Nobody likes wearing masks, just like nobody likes going to the dentist to have a cavity filled. But it is something that we should be doing to help keep everyone safe and healthy. If we have to wear a mask to go grocery shopping, we should continue to wear masks in school. Kids do not understand boundaries. They get way too close to each other, leaning over to share their thinking with their neighbor, or during partner work, or in line to go to specials, or in the locker room coming to school or going home. Our school district cannot guarantee social distancing and hasn't been able to since coming back to in-person learning, and I think many parents were led to believe that this was something that was able to happen. It wasn't then, and it isn't now. We do not have the space. Since we cannot guarantee social distancing, masks should not be optional. I have seen COVID spread in my classroom this year, and for one student in particular, it was horrible. The close contacts also tested positive.
Statement has 30 seconds.
And one of those close contacts was asymptomatic. That student could have spread the virus to so many more classmates had masks not been in use. This is too much too fast and is almost like an experiment. We can have one of two outcomes. One that is everyone stays safe and all goes well. The other is that we end up having to go remote, like almost all schools who do not require masks have had to do at some point in the school year. We'll end it there. That's all. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, 5.1, gym floor work update.
Thank you very much. Back in October, the board gave its approval to the district to pursue a $50,000 maintenance grant being offered by the state. The application was made. The funds will be utilized to complete the gym floors at both Fierk and Cruz. They weren't done this past year because that's an area we use for storage. DLA is finalizing the plans and the specs. Because the project will be over $50,000, it'll need to go out to bid. Next week at the regular board meeting, we'll be asking for the board's approval to go out to bid for this project. Any
Questions from the board? Thank you, Matt. 6.1, 2021-2022 calendar update.
Thank you very much. As you know, last meeting I shared a proposed calendar, and I just have a brief update I'd like to share with you. We are now required to take off November 8th to honor Election Day, and so with that, we are going to trade the day of Monday, April 10th, which is that Monday after Easter that was on the original proposed calendar. So you have the updated calendar before you, and we will be asking for approval at the next board meeting. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
I have a question, Wendy. There's a sick day on the last day of school?
Yeah, it's a half day.
Okay.
Yeah, it's replicated like this year, like we did with that half day, for tying up all the loose ends at the end of the year, making sure that, we're getting all of our end of the year kinds of activities that teachers need to get done at the end of the year.
Okay, and having a SIP day at the end of the year what is the benefit of having it at the end of the year?
A half day at the end of the year?
No, the SIP day.
Oh, the SIP day. That's like, we do our closing procedures at the end of the day for that last half day.
Okay.
Wendy, before we approve the calendar next week, if I could just ask for the rationale for the placement of the second conferences.
Sure. I think the teams were feeling that that's more of that final goal session where they meet and look at those goals that they established back in October. They feel like it's a touch base kind of meeting or a PT conference, and they feel like along the way, certainly, I think you had mentioned before some concerns about making sure there was time to change or make some changes to those goals if they felt that was a need, and they felt like along the way that communication should be there if there were any concerns along the way. So it's kind of like just an end of the year, wrap it up, take a look at those goals that were established and see where they're at and see where the students and the families want to go forward from there.
Other questions, comments from the board? Okay. Moving on, 7.1 COVID-19 update.
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Jeff Galitz, the district's lawyer, who's going to summarize the happenings in the legal world.
Good morning, board, administration, and audience. So I want to give an update on, from our perspective as the district's law firm, what's been going on with the litigation. I want to give a little bit of context as to the particular rulings from Friday. So there's a number of pieces of litigation around the state that are pending. On Friday, there was one ruling that was issued by one judge in Sangamon County involving 4 cases. Now, 2 of those cases in particular are of most note. One of them was against 145 school districts around the state of Illinois regarding student issues, specifically regarding the mask mandate and the exclusion of close contacts. The other piece of litigation that was of most note involved about 20 or 21 school districts involving personnel. And in particular, they were challenging the validity of the state mask mandates and the state mandates for school employees to be either vaccinated or test weekly. The judge who is hearing these cases, again, is hearing both of those cases as well as 2 others. So on Friday, she issued something called a temporary restraining order, a TRO. Temporary restraining order, I emphasize for a second the temporary. Temporary is a preliminary ruling for a limited period of time. Usually it's for about a 10-day period. In this case, the judge stated that it would remain in effect until a trial on the merits of the case, but it is a preliminary ruling by the judge in those particular cases. Now, as you already know, District 146 was not a party to either of those cases, or frankly, to the other 2 that I haven't discussed at length. So, for your district, the temporary restraining order doesn't directly bind you, right? You are not a party to the case. You are not directly impacted and bound either way here. Now, what the judge did in her temporary restraining order was a few things. Number one, she declared that the emergency rules that were issued by the State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health back in September of 2021, she declared them null and void, okay? And that's important because we'll get to what that means as a practical matter for you in just a moment. There are also a number of the governor's executive orders that have impacted the requirements for schools for a time now. And the judge enjoined, meaning prevented the state from implementing those executive orders for certain measures. Of note here, we're talking again about mask mandate for students and staff, the close contact exclusion period, and the requirement for school employees to be either vaccinated or test weekly. Now, the judge also did something unique, and it's part of why this case is getting so much attention around the state, even among districts that are not named in part of that litigation, is because of the sheer number of school districts involved. I want to point out, and this may not be obvious to all, that there have been different judges around the state who have been hearing school COVID cases in one form or another, involving certain districts here and there, and they've reached differing conclusions previously. Some judges have issued TROs on individual districts on individual issues, and other judges have denied TROs on similar issues. What we don't have yet is a ruling that has gone up to the appellate court that gives clarity across the state as to the authority of the governor and ISB and the IDPH. Now, I'm focusing in my comments on the authority of those state entities, but I also want to point out that at issue in the case is also the ability of a local school board to impose any kind of COVID mitigation measures. The judge in the ruling on Friday addressed some of those issues a bit in her comments, in her opinion, but her actual ruling did not eliminate local authority. So the focus here is on the state. If the governor and ISB and IDPH, if their rules and if their emergency rules and their executive order are out the window, then what does that mean? Now, I want to point out, again, the temporary nature here. When I say they're out the window, that's an oversimplification because already today there's an appeal pending by the governor's office and some of the school districts that are involved. There is an emergency motion filed today to stay the court's TRO. So as a practical matter, I just want to spell this out. The TRO said the executive orders and the emergency rules are null and void, and so, not in effect. And the judge actually included a footnote sort of inviting or encouraging non-parties, students and parents and school districts that were not part of the litigation, to basically ignore those rulings. But the temporary nature here, it's been appealed, so the TRO is in effect, but the appeal is pending already today, and a motion to stay has been filed. So the stay, if the appellate court grants the stay, what that would mean as a practical matter is for the next several days, while the appellate court is reviewing the lower court's opinion, the TRO would not be in effect. Now, as we stand here right now today, I've been checking my phone to see if there's any updates on that, there has not been any decision on the motion to stay. So in this moment right now, the TRO remains in effect as to those school districts in those cases, but it is possible that the appellate court could issue a stay of that ruling at any point. It could happen, theoretically even tonight because of the emergency nature of the request, or at any point during the coming days. Now, the timeline for an appeal of a TRO is different than normal litigation, right? Oftentimes in litigation, it's a sort of drawn-out process. The TRO was issued. The state and any of the school district defendants had until today to file an appeal, which they've done. Then the plaintiffs will have an opportunity, a few days to respond, and then the appellate court will have a few days thereafter to respond. So this entire process, we expect an appellate court ruling by the end of next week. I think it should be by the Thursday the 17th, but certainly it's in a matter of days. The appellate court ruling is different than the trial court ruling in that, generally speaking, appellate court authority is binding precedent on other appellate courts around the state. So whereas right now we have a ruling from one circuit court judge, and I don't want to diminish, it's a big one because there's so many districts involved, but it's one circuit court judge's opinion, and now it's going to be reviewed by a three-judge appellate court panel. And we should have that opinion, like I said, by next week. I mentioned just briefly this idea of local authority. The board, and I talked about this to some degree months ago when we were first starting out this year, actually, when the board was considering kind of a phased approach of monitoring your local numbers and phasing in or phasing out mitigation measures as appropriate. And again, that authority is not directly impacted by this opinion. The judge made some comments about that, and certainly if you're looking at a plan like that, it's something you'd want to work with your local health department on. But I do want to be clear, the state mandates are what's at issue and are what are being appealed. The local authority has not been ruled on formally in the TRO either way. So in terms of the district's, well, let me pause there. Any questions from the board or administration about the process of what's happening in the litigation or what it means?
When does this become law? Does it become like, I mean, when the appellate court rules, does it then, they're just ruling on the restraining order, does it then get kicked back to the circuit court to actually have a trial?
It could, it could. The appellate court could handle it, I suppose, a few different ways. If they uphold the TRO, then it probably would go back to the circuit court for further proceedings. Again, the TRO is the preliminary measure, and it would be heard in more detail. Quite honestly, the nature of how in-depth the hearing was for the TRO and how in-depth the judge's opinion is, I would anticipate any further proceedings are, frankly, by comparison, a little less involved. The TRO hearing in these couple of cases that I'm talking about, it was heard over the course of 4 days, 4 essentially full days, and it's for a TRO motion that's extremely unusual. Oftentimes a TRO is in court, it's heard and decided all in a matter of 24 hours, 48 hours. It's a very quick process usually. In this case, it was much more drawn out. So to answer your question, I mean, the appellate court's ruling, I think, would really set the tone for what is going to be binding around the state. Now, there's always the possibility, of course, that either party, whoever does not prevail at the appellate court, could file an appeal up to the Illinois Supreme Court. It would be up to the Illinois Supreme Court whether they wanted to take up that case or not. It's not a mandatory process. If the appellate court struck down or dissolved the TRO, is the terminology, they would, yes, kick it back to the circuit court for further proceedings. However, the appellate court likely would include, obviously, an opinion with this explanation of its interpretation of the law, and that will largely influence how the lower court proceedings would go from there. So, certainly you're asking, I think, for a definitive end date. I can't give you a definitive end date on the entire litigation, but I certainly think that the appellate court's ruling on the preliminary TRO here will be very telling in terms of whether the state has the authority to keep its mandates in place or whether it doesn't, and then local boards can make the determination about their own circumstances.
I guess what I'm asking is it's always been very important to us to be in compliance with the law.
Yep.
So when do we know when we're in compliance or out of compliance?
So, yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think the appellate court ruling is the time that we'll have the most clarity about that. I mean, for the time being, and I want to be fully transparent with the board, there are some districts now who were actually parties to the litigation, and they are, by virtue of the order, because they were direct parties, they are having to comply with these requirements already as of today. And there are also some districts who are viewing the TRO and saying, although we're not a party, we believe the judge said what she said, and we believe that we either have to or are in a position that we're going to abide by that, and we're going to do away with the mitigation measures. So there are some districts who have made that decision even now or will be this week and are making the switch even though they're not parties to the case. Yeah.
The stay from the appellate court, would that, how long do you, in your opinion? It would, two days, Wednesday would be late, Thursday? How long would they, I'm sure part of it is that that it's causing all kinds of chaos.
Yeah.
In all these districts. That's probably one of the arguments, I would imagine.
Certainly.
So that has got to weigh on, and they read the newspapers just like everybody else, right? So would that incline them to decide one way or the other? And would they announce that they're not staying, or is if they decide not to stay, they just don't do anything, or did they say we're not going to stay this while we hear it?
Yeah, that's a great question and an important detail to know. So the way that it works is the state has filed a motion requesting the stay. So the appellate court is in a position where it has to rule on that one way or the other. For the very reasons that you state, I would anticipate that they would rule sooner rather than later, meaning within the next day or two, one way or the other. Either granting the stay, in which case we revert back as though it's last Thursday and all the mitigation mandates remain in place. Or if they deny the motion for stay, then we are in this, I don't want to call it a holding pattern, we are in this period where we are waiting on the actual appellate court ruling to know for sure which way to go with that. So I hope and expect that the appellate court will rule soon, one way or the other, on the stay. Because frankly, as a practical matter, the worst case scenario is that districts are left in limbo, not knowing the status for the next week and a half until a ruling is decided. So certainly, the stay, this case is newsworthy enough that it may make the news when and if a stay is issued. But certainly, within our law firm and other firms, we're monitoring that, and if a stay is put in place, we would be pushing that information out to the school districts.
We are not out of compliance by not adhering to the TRO, correct? It's not the law, it's the TRO. It's a temporary restraining order. Correct?
That's correct. That is my read. I will tell you, different attorneys around the state will tell you different things on that, but I don't believe that you're out of compliance at this time. If there's an appellate court ruling that says, the same thing as the TRO, then we'll have to talk again about, what that means for you. And yeah.
This immediate, right now, at 5 o'clock on a Friday, it's the law. Would they give us some lead time to get into compliance? Like 5 days, 3 days, something? 5 o'clock on Friday, those districts that were a part of it, all of a sudden, it's over the weekend, and Monday morning, it's a new world.
Yeah. I don't know whether they'll give any sort of lead time. Again, I believe the appellate court's deadline to rule would be a Thursday, and if that's the case, they may issue it Thursday, and we're looking at next week Friday as either.
They issue at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night, the next morning, these are the rules.
Correct. Now, that being said, the fact that this TRO was issued on a Friday night, there's pros and cons of that, right? Districts at least had the weekend to scramble to figure out what that meant for them. But on the flip side, you're scrambling trying to figure that out over a weekend, and that's hard on everybody. So certainly that's, we're continuing to monitor that, and any developments on the appellate court front, we'll be notifying, superintendents of the districts that we work with. So I want to just talk for a moment about some of the, your options here. The option to keep the mitigation, right, in place while this appeal works its course. Certainly that is the approach that I think, frankly, that's the one that I would recommend, is to see what the appellate court does with this and see where that leaves us. However, I know from what you're seeing in the media, what we're experiencing and working with on other districts, that opinion is unpopular to some, which quite honestly, either way you go here is going to be unpopular to some. And so you do face, during this period of time, if you keep the mitigation measures in place, you face the possibility of disruption in your schools if you have students who are showing up refusing to wear masks and so on. you face the possibility of litigation from other parents who feel like, the law is such that they want to move on it now. That is a real risk in staying the course for the moment. If you were to take the approach to say, look, the TRO essentially invalidated these executive orders and rules, and so we're going to go to mask optional or mask recommended now, while the appeal is still pending, you're going to have some issues to contend with there as well, right? You may have parents of the students who, support masks, who might be, looking at their legal remedies as well. Certainly, we heard varying iterations of workplace issues, and those are important to think about whenever it is you go to mask optional, whether that's today, in 2 weeks, in a few months, whatever your kind of off-ramp plan might look like. You're going to obviously need to work through any changes in working conditions with your unions. You will have to contend with and plan for the potential sub-shortage. You heard a little bit about that. I think that's a challenge that just all districts are facing. And individuals who are currently your employees who might need to look at either trying to push for remote accommodations or leaves of absence, and then you're stuck trying to fill those roles as well. So those are certainly some of the considerations you'll need to think through. Again, whether that is something now or in the days, weeks to come. The other thing I want to point out with the sequence of events here, we had, as of Thursday, we had state mandates, these mitigation measures are in place. As of Friday, TRO issued that purports to say none of them are in place. If you make the change to mask optional, whether it's now or in the next few days, and then there's a stay of that TRO issue, that TRO ruling put in place, it's possible you could be saying to your community, tonight or tomorrow, hey, we're going mask optional, and then later that same day or in 2 days down the road, the stay is issued, and now you're saying, nope, we're going actually back to masks. So there's this potential for kind of, I refer to it as a whiplash effect, where you're kind of telling your community you're going one way and then going back. Whereas the ability to wait, again, just a short period of time to see what the appellate court does with this would give you the ability to kind of stay the course for a few more days and then make a more sure-footed determination about which way to go beyond that. Another consideration whenever you're looking to go mask optional is the impact on students who are not willing or not comfortable being in the school building and requests for remote learning, right? We have, under the school code, we have certain limited authority to provide remote learning options for students. And right now, it's mostly kind of an individualized basis, or if an entire school building had to go on an adaptive pause, you can provide remote learning. It is possible, there are a few people that alluded to this earlier, it is possible that a school district, either due to some kind of severe staffing shortage or a number of students out, could be faced with the possibility of having to go back to remote learning kind of across the district. Now, that's going to be, I'm not saying that will be you, but that is a possibility to think about, is how many students and staff do you expect to be out, and what will that actually look like in your classrooms? And then, of course, I'm not a medical professional. I don't want to stand here and pretend to say, what's safest or not. But when I was here in the fall, one of the things we talked about is not just safety, but also, liability of the district and those getting sick. In fairness, we have not seen a rash of lawsuits against school districts for students or staff members getting sick. It's not to say that it couldn't happen, but we have not seen that yet. But that is certainly something to give consideration to as you make your decision, as well as not just safety for safety's sake, but also safety for, from a liability perspective for the district. So those are certainly some of the considerations to think about. I want to open it up to you all as well for additional questions.
Anything, board?
More questions?
No? Further questions for the lawyer? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Board, I know that we've had a lot to take in tonight. I do want to shine the light again on how real the labor shortage is in education and how finite the number of subs available to us are. That's very important. So I know that next to students, perhaps, our staff is our most valuable resource always. And I feel that even more tangibly these days with the nature of the availability of labor. And they've never been more precious to us than they are right now. That said, I think that you can feel in society the need for some type of beginning to the end of what we've been experiencing for a couple years. You even hear from the mouths of labor themselves, as I appreciate Karen and Julie reading us the will of the folks who couldn't attend, but several times you hear people say that they're hopeful that this happens soon and that it happens when it's safe to do so. And I think that even the most careful are very much looking forward to that. So humbly, what I'd like to recommend is, per the recommendation of council and the input from everyone that I've been able to speak with since Friday, that the board charged me with developing an end game, so to speak, with staff, beginning immediately. We would start tomorrow. And I'd like to develop two plans. One plan that we would put in place if the lower court's ruling is upheld, and one that we would put in place if it's overturned, so that we would be prepared in either case for whatever the appellate court ultimately rules. And the good news is, it sounds like that needs to happen by law by the end of next week. I'd recommend that as soon as we had those plans developed, that the board come back together in a special meeting so we can review them with the board. The board could even give us the nod to implement one or the other, whichever is applicable based on what the appellate court does. So they would just naturally be in place the next day once that ruling comes. Of course, both plans would have to please the board in order for you to feel comfortable doing that. And we can go back to the drawing board as many times as we need to in order to find something that does. I would share with the people on that team that the objective is to get to a mask-free or a mask-optional environment as soon as safely possible, as quickly as possible, either way. So if the appellate court upholds the ruling of the lower court, of course, that would need to happen quite suddenly, according to law. But if the appellate court overturned the ruling of the lower court, we would still have a plan in the spirit of reduced measures according to, or reduced mitigation strategies according to our local measures. You heard from folks speaking tonight how much lower our positivity numbers were last week than the week before, dramatically lower than the week before. And it sounds like health experts expect this week to be even lower than that. So there's a good chance that even if the appellate court overturns the ruling of the lower court, that it could be safe for us to reduce mitigation strategies almost immediately either way. You'll notice, forgive me for citing another district, but District 230 went to masks optional not because of the ruling of the court, but instead because they had, their local plan had mitigation strategy reductions built in, and that they met that metric, and that was the reason why. It was kind of a nice coincidence that that happened in concert with that ruling, but that if there was no court case, they would have been in position to remove the masks today either way. So that's in the spirit of the plan that the board developed and briefly approved in July before the governor undid our authority to do that. And I think that that could be the spirit in which we develop a new plan in the next couple days. That if our numbers are low, we roll things back, and if the numbers increase, we add things back, and we do it strategically to whatever we're seeing. So if it's places where clumps of kids run masked, then maybe masks is the strategy that's necessary. If it's close contacts, then we need to contact trace more carefully. If it's those that otherwise would be eligible for test to stay, then our magnifying glass would point at that as the appropriate strategy. I think there's a way that we can be strategic about which strategies are serving us and which ones are overabundant and unnecessary. And I'd like to have other smart minds in the room when we're developing that, and I think we could develop it rather quickly. So that would be my recommendation. Of course, whatever the will of the board is, I'm excited to implement that with.
I've got two questions for Jeff. I'm sorry. You said that the ruling was that we had to work with our local health department. Would that?
If you were imposing your local authority to set local rules, that you should work in consultation with your local health department.
And that would be, I'm assuming that's the Cook County Department of Public Health?
Correct.
What is their, what authority do they have? Do they have the authority to implement mandates? Let's say Cook County wanted to just implement the mandates.
So Cook County has the Department of Public Health, the state level, as well as the local departments, so Cook County being one of them. They have the authority to impose quarantine and isolation. Now, the statutory reference that is, in fact, it's the subject of the litigation, is this idea that quarantine or isolation, and I'm using those two terms specifically, are can only be put in place when you either have the consent of the person involved, or there's a 48-hour window where a health department can do an emergency quarantine order, and then there's a court order that would follow. Now, the thing that's
Jeff, give me 1 second, please. I'm going to ask the audience to keep their comments to themselves. Thank you.
The thing that is the subject of the litigation, a big focus of the litigation, is what does it mean to quarantine, or what does it mean to isolate? And this was something we talked about back in the fall as well. In my view, there's a distinction between telling someone they need to go and stay in their home and be locked away from society, either because they've been exposed or because they are positive for whatever the communicable disease is, versus having location-specific requirements, either a screening test or wearing a mask. The school exclusion piece, being excluded because you're a close contact, again, there's a distinction in my mind, and we'll see how this plays out again, but between saying you can't be at school for the day versus you've got to be locked away at home, in a quarantine. And a primary focus of the litigation is on what does quarantine mean, and the definition that is really the focus is a definition that was set by the Illinois Department of Public Health and then removed or changed by the Department of Public Health, and now the court is, at least the trial court, is undoing that and saying no. I don't want to overstate, but the mitigation measures at issue, mask, school exclusion for close contact, and the vaccination or testing mandate, this judge is saying that those are forms of quarantine, and therefore this protocol applies. So if the appellate court agrees with that, then we'll have to, as part of the planning process, you'd have to talk about what that is going to look like for the district. How is your health, so back to this local authority, how is the local health department going to support your district in identifying, when there's an outbreak in a classroom and what to do with those kiddos, or when students really do need to be excluded. The ability of a school district to exclude students is, again, in my view, it's inherent in the authority of schools to create safe schools and to provide safe schools, right? If we kind of rewind pre-COVID, most people wouldn't think twice about a school district having the authority to send home a kid who just vomited on the floor or was running a 104-degree fever, right? We'd call the parents, send them home, like all would be well and good. Obviously, that's all changed because of a lot of dynamics at play with COVID, but that's the kind of local authority I'm talking about. And when you're exercising it, especially if it's excluding kids physically from the building, you should do it in concert with your local health department.
Okay, and the districts that are under the TRO have no mitigations. They cannot do anything, correct? Or is it my mistaken?
The mitigation measures that are specifically targeted in this case are those three that I mentioned: masks, exclusion of close contacts, and the employee vaccination or testing. So conceivably, there are other mitigation measures that they could do, but those, I do want to be clear, those districts that are named parties in the lawsuit are, I mean, they're working with their individual legal counsel on how to implement what the judge has ordered for the time being, because they're bound by it. And when I say bound by it, I mean, if those school districts violate the order, they could be held in contempt by that judge. Your district is not in that position because you are not a party to the cases.
I'd like to say that I support your recommendation to keep the mitigations. Jeff, I support your recommendation. I'd like to go mass optional, but I'd like to give you time to plan it and to create a timeline to roll back mitigations when it's safe to do so as soon as possible, and that I support the staff and I'd like them to be part of the plan as you suggested.
But we should have a ruling on the stay in, today's Monday, Wednesday, we could assume?
That is certain. I don't know if I could say you could assume, but that's certainly my hope and expectation, but we're at the whim of the appellate court on that.
And then, Dean, if they do grant the stay, we wouldn't be able to implement whichever plan was right until the appellate court ruled, and obviously the stay would end, but.
I'm worried about a yo-yo effect here. We say mask optional tonight, and then Wednesday we go back. I think if we wait until Wednesday or Thursday, if the stay is denied, right, I think we're on a lot firmer ground.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Dean. I'd also like to add to the recommendation, I think that we should keep our current plan in place while we're writing the alternative plan, just so that we're not in a position where we have no plan at all for a period of limbo.
Well, we had a plan in July, correct? We sat in these three in July. Why can't we implement that plan? I'm just asking. We had a plan. We had a mitigation plan, correct?
I mean, I just want to read it before I tell you whether that's cool or not.
Because if the stay is, I don't want to take off all the mitigations, if that's what the TRO says. And to do something right now, after we've been doing something else, I would have preferred some lead time, but I want to be mask optional, but I don't want to do it tonight, and then there's a stay tomorrow.
Well, that's a big reason why I'm recommending that we keep honoring our current plan while we write.
I was really hoping we could have a decision one way or the other on the stay before we came here today.
Yeah, that would.
Me too. I've been checking my phone constantly in hopes of that.
So did the entire state.
Yeah.
Jill?
Yeah, well, while I do agree that we need a plan to peel back the mitigations and, ultimately, I think we're a little late in that. Like, I would have liked that we already had one in place like 230 does. And I also agree that there will be an appeal and a stay. When we came up with our plan in July, Jeff, you presented us with a plan that we would be mask recommended. And then 2 weeks later, we were told, we decided to follow the mandate. I feel that we've been told by this TRO that those rules are null and void, and even if it's just for 2 days, I feel like we have to abide by that, because that's what we did in August. And if and when, and I do believe they will change again in 2 days, and I understand that that is a roller coaster, but that's what I said I would do in August, and that's what I say I will do tonight, and that's what I would say I would do in 2 days. And in the meantime, we should come up with a plan. So when we do have local authority, that we have a good plan in place to peel back the mitigations. So my opinion tonight is based on what I feel we are being told to do legally, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with how I feel about masks or close contacts. And I understand that it's disruptive to have to change it back and forth, but that's where I am tonight.
So, Jill, can I ask you a question? So you feel in opposition to what legal counsel just described to the board? You feel that,
I feel he described my opinion as well.
okay, so I'm just trying to get clarification. I'm not, absolutely not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to understand your position.
That there was also he has a view, and there are other lawyers that have other views, so.
Correct, yeah, I understand that, but I mean, in specific to the recommendation we were given by our district lawyer this evening, you have an opposing view to that?
I do.
Okay, I just wanted clarification, thank you. John?
I think we should do Jeff's recommendation, stay the course, and work with the staff and roll this back slowly and carefully.
Can I please add that I also do 100% agree that in making our plans, I would like to work with all of our staff and all of our families. I just feel like legally I'm being told to do this for right now, like I was legally told to mandate masks in August.
Okay, Patty?
I feel very similar to Jill. I am very for the optional mask. When Dean had asked Jeff if we were in compliance, I mean, his answer was, I believe so. I mean, to me, I feel the same way Jill does, in that we're kind of not in compliance with the judge's ruling. So, it is going to be bad if we have to go back to it if there's a stay, and but I feel also that's what we should do.
Okay. Rick?
I'm going to weigh in to say, I feel the same way as Patty and Jill. It seems very arbitrary, almost just like a lottery, that, some districts had people sue, some didn't. I think it costs money to get in on the lawsuit. I think there were some people that probably would have joined the law. Let me ask you this. Are people able to join the lawsuit at present? Are people able to add their name to the suit?
Excuse me. Once again, ask for silence from the crowd. Thank you.
If there are additional people who wish to be added, certainly they could contact the legal counsel that is involved in representing that side. There would need to be a motion to intervene and add additional parties. It's not something that you can just say, sign me up and I'm in. One of the pieces of this case that I didn't mention, but it ties into this point, is that there were a dozen, students from each of those districts. So I mentioned 145 districts in the students' case, 21 or so in the employee case. There were a few students from each of those districts in the students' case, and a few employees from each of the districts in those cases. The judge, there was a motion that was pending to certify as a class, right? You've heard of class certification. All students in those districts. That still wouldn't have applied to you all directly because you're not a district involved. But to certify the entire class of all students in those 145 districts and all employees in those 21 districts. And those motions were denied. There is not class certification. That being said, I duly acknowledge the judge's wording about the effect and the footnotes where she's sort of speaking to the non-parties. But, yeah, so certainly that is a possibility, but it's, again, not as simple as just I sign up and I'm in.
Given where we're at, and given the fact that it seems, although to me, it seems, I agree with, you know, Jill and Patty that we're not, it seems arbitrary and unfair, but we are where we are. I think we need to develop taking a couple days to develop a plan, assuming that the plaintiffs are upheld in appeals. We have to get that, and we can work with the teachers, we can work with whoever we need to get that plan in place. I think that has to happen ASAP, and I think that as a prerequisite of that plan, we have to assume that all the things that were prohibited in the judge's ruling, the mandatory masking, the quarantining, the test to stay, right? Am I getting those right?
Not the test to stay,
Not
the
the test.
employee vaccination or test.
Employee vaccination. We have to assume that those are going to be prohibited. And so we need to work with our, you know, work with the people here very quickly to get to a situation where everyone's going to be comfortable. And then likewise, we need to probably, I agree that the second plan, we need to go dust off what we talked about last summer as a starting point and adapt it to where we are right now. And, you know, just because the court may rule next week doesn't mean, I mean, it could happen sooner, right?
It could happen sooner, probably not a whole lot sooner because it's a tight time frame as it is, but that could happen sooner, yes.
So I think that needs to be the priority.
If the rules are out, test to stay was an IDPH carrot dangled in front of you to put the mask on. If that's null and void, why can't we just do test to stay on everybody if we wanted to do it as a part of our mitigation plans? If the rules are null and void, and so we're making up the rules, right? Am I right? I mean, we're...
No, I mean, I wouldn't say it quite that categorically, but I hear the point behind your question.
point.
Yeah.
All right, so test to stay was an IDPH thing to incentivize wearing the mask. If you wear the mask, you can test to stay. Why can't we just do test to stay? Why can't we make that part of our plan
In place of what?
as one of the mitigations that we keep?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, test to stay doesn't have to go away, right?
Maybe, although if the ruling ultimately is that close contacts don't have to be excluded at all, then test to stay is kind of a moot
wait a
point.
minute,
But
the whole point about test to stay was to give everybody peace of mind. The parent, the kid, the teacher, everybody, right? This kid was a close contact and he or she is not positive. I would think everybody would want to know if your kid was positive or not, correct? So, I mean, I
I
thought
can't
that
speak
was
for
the best
everyone,
part of that, was the only good thing about that whole, was the test to stay.
Dean, we have to be careful about speaking categorically for everybody, so I just think that we be careful as we do that.
I stand corrected.
Certainly the folks that would develop the plan would, you know, we start with everything on the table, right? And
Yeah.
And I also think I'm oversimplifying a bit by saying if the appellate court upholds or overturns. It's my understanding that the appellate court can do anything in between too and say this is cool and this isn't.
Correct.
It's not as simple as uphold or overturn, that there could be a whole new set of, well, these are inbounds, but these are out of bounds. Jeff, can you do a better job than that?
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. They could, for example, they could say excluding close contacts is quarantine, it has to go through this formal process, but wearing a mask is not, and so that can remain, or, you know, some combination of that. It's not an all or nothing proposition for the appellate court.
Our understanding would be that you would want to be compliant. So if the appellate court said everything's on the table, then the plan that, you'd have more latitude in what it says, so.
But we could be nimble, and that wouldn't take long once we get, if we're gonna operate from tonight forward, waiting for that the law, it will be, it's not the law of the land right tonight, but it could be by next week, is what you're saying.
Well, except, I mean, we got a memo from ISB that said, if you're not named, you're expected to follow our rules. Now, they don't have quite the bravado they did before Friday night's ruling, but they're still.
Does it say please now instead
Right,
of?
right.
Okay.
They are publicly asserting that they still have authority in districts that weren't named, so, for whatever that's worth.
I would like to give this a couple of days, just because I don't want to say tonight we're doing this, and then tomorrow we can't. But we have a plan from July that I think we could, you can get with staff, we can, if something that we put in July is just not practical anymore, we can change that. I think we should give Jeff that authority to use their judgment on those things. I would think the stay could be one of them. And if by Wednesday, Thursday, the stay is denied, if the stay is granted, it's all irrelevant anyway. So if the stay is denied, we can move forward then with a plan. Would 2-3 days be enough for staff and?
We'll get it done with as much time as.
Because it sounds like we've got about 2 or 3 days until we're on firmer ground. I don't want to, I don't want to do this as a grandstand, I hate that. And just to do it, just to say that we did it. That's not governance.
If the stay is granted, we have till a week from Thursday. If it's not, we've got as much time as we've got until it's denied. So we would get to work very quickly.
And
I would submit that would be the most prudent course of action.
Yeah, we proceed on a timeline, assuming that the stay will be denied, and then we just see what happens.
Yeah, that's really my only wild card, is if the stay is denied before we have time, if they deny it tonight, if they deny it at noon tomorrow, then we wouldn't have adequate time to have something in place already. So, I mean, can I ask for?
But we have the plan from July.
Well, what I would ask is, can we do that tonight and then if the stay is denied, it immediately goes into effect. You don't have to wait for us to have another 2 days to call a meeting.
Right, I mean, if the stay is denied, then we know that required masking, required employee testing, and quarantining of close contacts that aren't symptomatic are out of bounds. So our plan would include only things that aren't that.
Quick point of order on that. If the stay is denied and we are continuing under the opinion, and I understand that there is some difference of opinion on that even on this board. If we are operating under the opinion that the TRO does not apply to us because we are not named in the lawsuit and a stay is denied, that doesn't change the first fact.
Correct. We'd be sitting in the same position as we are right now here
In limbo,
tonight.
right.
But for a longer
For
period,
a longer.
yeah. Correct.
Great, awesome, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna give my opinion. I've held back. I wanted to make sure I heard everybody else's. I agree with Jeff, and also legal counsel. I believe that we should hold in place with the current mitigation plans that are working until as such, A, we either hear about a stay, again, praise be, hopefully sooner rather than later, and then operate from that point based on that. If a stay is granted, again, then everything holds until the 17th, which is next Thursday. If it's denied, then yes, we do have a plan that we discussed and was put in place. It has to be looked at. You know, it has to be made sure that the staff and the community and the administration are comfortable with it. And then we move forward. I absolutely am a fan of getting to a safe place where all of these mitigations can be pulled back as needed and then added back as needed if necessary. But I think my opinion is that we give the administration the leeway to move forward this way, and with the understanding that there will be two plans and there will be tight timelines on everything. That's my opinion.
Just to note, the state of New Jersey announced that they were lifting all their school mandates in March 1st, I believe.
Yeah, he gave a timeline, so.
Yeah, he gave a timeline, a lead up to it. So, I mean, we're moving to that anyway. So this planning would have to happen anyway, even if you just said 2:30 already had theirs. So we're going to have to do this anyway. So it's not like it's going to be a waste of time.
I'd like to do it as fast as possible regardless of the nature of the stay so that the board could consider the plans and perhaps even ratify the plans before appellate opinion is granted, so that once it is, it just automatically triggers A or B.
Well, we're meeting next Monday at our regular meeting. So I guess for lack of a better term, permanent plan, we'll call it that. The extended plan, whatever you label, we could vote on Monday, but the temporary plan, if the stay is denied, can go Thursday or Friday, but with ample input from everybody involved, which we had in July. That plan in July had everybody's fingerprints on it.
Is that clear for you? Awesome. Other comments from the board on this topic?
Darcy, can you?
Absolutely. Can we have a show of hands on, we're not going to call a vote on this, but we are going to show a show of hands. Who is in favor of, and correct me if I'm saying this incorrect, but who is in favor of continuing forward with the recommendation that legal counsel and Dr. Saywick proposed tonight, with all of the caveats that were included by board members as far as timelines and as far as watching for stays and appellate reactions?
To be clear, we're saying the goal is to have a plan in place as practically as possible to be in place in the event a stay is denied, understanding that a stay could come tomorrow, or a ruling could come tonight or tomorrow morning, but we're going to endeavor to try and hit that deadline to the best of our ability.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing.
If the stay is approved, I'd like to bring plans A and B for your consideration a week from tonight. If the stay is denied before then as soon as possible before then. My guess would be Thursday or Friday.
Okay. Does that give you what you need? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to just editorialize a second. I do deeply appreciate the public help through that discussion. I know how difficult these are. I know we have a variety of opinions everywhere, and I know that it's difficult, and I do deeply appreciate your help in walking through this as a community. Moving on, 8.1, discussion of any new business from the board. Seeing none, can I have a motion to go in closed session?
I move we go in closed session for a personnel matter.
Second.
Secretary, call the roll.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Shalata?
Yes.
Dunlap?
Yes.
Jasper?
Yes.
Lloyd, yes. Barry?
Yes.
Nenza?
Yes. There will potentially be action after closed session. Thank you. discipline of tenured teacher. Is there a motion?
I move to uphold a 2-day unpaid suspension of and to approve the resolution authorizing issuance of notice of remedial warning to Dan McLaughlin.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Secretary, call the roll.
Yes.
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 I move we go into open session, or closed session for a labor matter.
Discussion? Secretary, call the roll.
Hold on.
Need to slightly correct. So, to go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining. That's it.
Okay. I move to go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining.
Secretary, call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. There will be no action following this closed. Thank you, everyone.